I am here with mayoral candidate Fred Dovigi, and we're going to discuss poverty. Which, as many of us know, has been an important, if not understated, issue of this campaign. Fred, why don't you tell us why this is an important issue?
Well, firstly, let me say that it's a very important issue to myself, because having entered this race 7 months ago and having gone through the various wards in the community, I've been able to see firsthand the degree of poverty that exists within the community. Quite often you read in the newspaper with respect to the various delivery networks, the problems that they face, but you really don't get a true appreciation of what's going on in the community until you find yourself upon those very doorsteps.
Okay. What are some of the things you've discovered, either by going door to door or in talking to various community groups?
Well, what I found is that there are a significant number of people in this community that are merely existing as opposed to living. A lot of them are in substandard housing accommodation. A lot of them are on fixed incomes. I have seen children that have gone without food within the community, and that is completely unacceptable to me. I've had discussions with the social agencies within the community that tell me that the problem isn't getting better. If anything, it's getting worse. And at the same time, I'm being told that this community is enjoying this high economic, prosperous time. Well, that is not being distributed to all within the community. There are seniors out there on fixed incomes and that are finding it more and more difficult year in and year out with respect to meeting just basic needs with respect to housing and that. And so I think that we really have to have discussion as to the sector in the community that has never really recovered from the bad economic times here in Sault Ste. Marie.
Okay. What are some of the root causes of poverty within this community?
That's a very good question, because every agency that you talk to comes at the problem of poverty from a different perspective. But I think in a number of cases, a lot of it has to do with the fact that people just are unable to fit into the system in terms of the new economy that's emerging. And so there has to be a bridging that needs to occur there to get these individuals up to a pace where they can participate. I'm thinking along the lines of my visit to the soup kitchen. A number of people there have issues that need to be addressed, and in part are being addressed throughout the various agencies in the community and that, but they're almost like the forgotten souls. We can do things for them, but again, it comes down to discussion. What I believe is that once you become aware of the problem, you become responsible for the problem. And having seen firsthand, as a full-time mayor, what I would do is, rather than sitting behind a desk, I would be out visiting with those social agencies and that, discussing with them what we can do from the municipal perspective, but at the same time, I need to know the information so that I can lobby on their behalf to the provincial and federal governments for dollars that are very necessary to have these groups go forward and do some real meaningful things for these folks out there in the community.
Okay. Now, you spent several years as a teacher. How does poverty tie to education? Is there a link? What is it?
Well, that's a very good question, actually. And I noticed that during those dark days, Sault Ste. Marie dark days from about 96 to 2001, there were a lot of students that I taught that went hungry day in and day out. And that certainly affected their learning at the high school level. They would never tell you, however, because their pride was most important to them. And I know that day in and day out, I would buy students lunch, whatever. Not that I want to sound like a hero or whatever, but I just cannot stand to see somebody hungry as a very basic thing in life. And I knew that as a result of their not having food or a limited amount of food. They were tired, they were listless, whatever. And so certainly it was having an effect during that period of time on our youth. And so I'm sure for the people out there that go through that situation day in and day out, the same kind of dynamics are at work.
Okay. Now, we've discussed how your teaching experience has given you insight into this problem. What I'd like to hear you say, and this is something we've mentioned off camera, is what types of insights have your teaching experience with hungry students and with others given you into resolving this problem?
Well, I think first of all, you need to develop the compassion, and you have to understand what it means to be in that situation. My home is situated next, as an example, situated next to the Children's Aid Society here. So I see what goes on 24/7 with respect to young children being brought into the Children's Aid Society. And in a lot of cases, parents just can't cope anymore, so those children are being brought to this agency here in the middle of the evening, and it really disturbs me to see that day in and day out. Now, you can ask Fred Dovigi, what are the solutions to that? Fred Dovigi is not the expert in that regard. What Fred Dovigi wants to do, again, is to create the partnerships, the linkages, so that if I can do anything as mayor, I'm going to say that your issue is up here as opposed to being down here, because social issues always tend to be at the bottom of the list in terms of being addressed. Whether it's good times or bad times, it just doesn't get the attention that it deserves.
So it sounds to me what you're suggesting is a communication and awareness strategy.
Well, everything is about communication today. And the minute that that breaks down, everything else in the process is flawed here. So, I mean, I've been around enough that I know that in a classroom situation, if you're not communicating properly, your message isn't getting across. And really, the people in the social network across the community have said to me, we need a strong voice advocating the things that we deem to be necessary within the community.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to share on the issue of poverty?
Well, for me, Sault Ste. Marie has always been a very giving community. And there is still a lot of need out there. And all I'm saying, and I agree with my opponent Debbie Amoroso on this, there needs to be a better balance within the community. My opponent has sat there for 6 years and has never once stood up in council and said, Mr. Mayor, we need a better balance in the community. Now that it's election time, she's saying to the community, support me because we need a better balance. And what Fred Dovigi is saying is, I'm not just going to talk about this issue, I'm going to go out there right after the election and I'm going to get down to the business of making things happen here.
Okay. And your proposal is basically communications and partnership.
It's being out on the street, it's being in touch, it's about putting people first.
Okay. Thank you.